This last few weeks, we've seen a storm halt the railway system. We've seen I think, some sort of leaking fire system halt Eurostar. All 41 trains cancelled, and no alternative. There were so many alternatives actually available. There's an extra station at Ebbsfleet where passengers presumably could have alighted, or they could have been bussed from Ebbsfleet to St Pancras. Some solution could have been found, but no, the better solution was simply to stop everything and terminate trains altogether, rather than terminating them at some specific location and then adding a bus. It's not about serving the customer. It's about serving themselves. The whole idea of travel in 21st century Britain has become an onanistic delight for the people who own the systems. They don't care whether the systems work, they just care whether they line their pockets, feathering their nest, putting hay in the attic. Well, there will come a point where people will just simply give up and use a bicycle. We will be going back to the 18th century where a journey is 10 miles down the road, and that would be an adventure. And I think that's a sorry development, and I think it's wrong. And in an age when you would have thought, in an age when computers have taken over, that computation, mathematics and all that sort of stuff would be easier. No, it's harder. It's harder to get an accurate answer. It's harder to get your banks to do anything. It's harder to get the post delivered. And yet we've computerized the post systems. The stamps now come with their own barcode, so it makes it easier for things to go through the system. And a stamp without a barcode simply doesn't work. It's the stamps that I've got, the wonderful red stamps with the Queen's head, are no longer functioning. It's a sort of madness that we've got into, where we're using technology to shut down access, to shut down success, and maybe we're just simply trying to make it as hard as possible to move, as hard as possible to get out of this country. We're trying to put up the barricades at the Channel and say we don't want you in, and we also don't want anybody else out. It's a sort of we used to talk about Fortress Europe. Now we're going to be talking about Fortress Britain, and yet Britain is rapidly going to get smaller and smaller. The rail companies, I think, are earning quite well, and yet they're not producing the service that that actually works. It relies on staff volunteering to work particular services, especially at the weekends, rather than them being rostered to do certain hours. So high rates of pay in the rail industry now are determined by people effectively doing overtime. The whole system has gone chaotic, and people would rather extend their holidays than actually do a day's work. People and the businesses who run these organisations, the management that run these organisations, are factoring in the fact that nobody really wants to do any work. And yet, at the same time, we have migrants locked into hotels, desperate to do something and not allowed to. I would strongly recommend going around the hotels, knocking on the doors and saying, would anybody like to train to be a train driver? Would anybody like to train to be a post person? And I'm sure you'd have people who are saying, yes, love to do it. Love to do it. Can we take over all the jobs that are not being done at the moment effectively? Could we work on weekends? It's better than sitting in limbo in a hotel, isn't it? And being mocked for being in a supposedly 5-star hotel. No, we're not in a 5-star hotel. We're slumming it in Novotel. It's a misery. Air traffic control. Can't we find people to actually do that? It went into meltdown in August. 1,600 flights cancelled in a single day because of a software error. The computer is supposed to be helping us, not hindering us, not bringing everything to a standstill. Baggage handlers, supposed to be functioning, not bringing everything to a standstill. This constant and unremitting chaos. We are reliant on one form of transport. We are reliant on one form of technology. And when that fails, when the Eurostar tunnel, one of the tunnels, it's got 2 tunnels, I don't see why we can't use the other one, when one of the tunnels is flooded, everything stops, everything grinds to a halt, like leaves on the train tracks. Every time we fail, it tells us that we are subject to a chaos of our own design. We aren't building in contingencies. We aren't building in any form of safety net. We aren't interested in that, because all we're interested in is management putting their cash in their pocket. And the only contingency we've got, and let's not underestimate this one, is the insurance payout that management makes sure it's up to date on, so that when the business that they're supposed to be running doesn't run, they still get paid. What chaos! This is simply wrong, isn't it? Isn't it wrong to be paid for not producing the goods? If I didn't produce the goods, I wouldn't get paid. If I didn't turn up for a lesson, I don't get paid. Why should the railway management be paid for a system that isn't working? Why should the post office be paid for a system which isn't working? And moreover, why should they be paid when we know they're busy pursuing other people, putting them in prison for something that they have done because they employed faulty computing? It's all back to the same thing, that we are relying on stuff that doesn't work and getting paid for it. Management, anyway. The rest of us are just, if we're lucky, we get a refund. If we're not lucky, we don't even get that.